Hi everyone, we're moving right along. We're in learning outcome number 4 of module 2. We're going to be covering the granulocytes, which are a type of white blood cells. Let's talk a little bit about the white blood cells first. So they are also known as leukocytes, and they're going to be scattered throughout the peripheral tissues. Circulating leukocytes, they will represent only a small fraction of their total population, because most of the leukocytes in the body, they're going to be found in the peripheral tissue. Now, white blood cells, they do help defend the body against invasion by pathogens, and they also remove toxins, wastes, and abnormal or damaged cells. White blood cells, they will contain a nuclei that will be characteristic sizes and shape depending on the cell. But all white blood cells, they are going to be as large as or larger than the red blood cells. There are two major classes of leukocytes. We call them granular leukocytes or granulocytes, which are the ones that we're covering in this learning outcome. And these will have large granular inclusions in their cytoplasm. And the other class of leukocytes are what we call the agranular leukocytes or granulocytes, which will not possess a cytoplasmic granule that's going to be visible with the use of a light microscope. So it does not mean that they don't have, it just means that it's hard for you to see the granules. And on this image, we can see all the blood cell types. The two that are in red are not part of the white blood cell population. And here are the red blood cells and the platelets. The ones that are part of the white blood cells are the lymphocytes, the monocytes, basophil, neutrophil, eosinophil, and macrophages. And the ones that we will cover on this lecture, again, are the ones that are the granulocytes. And as we can see from this image, the only ones that have granules that we can see are the basophil, the neutrophil, and the eosinophil, which are the ones that we'll be covering. Here we're still covering all the leukocytes, and a typical microliter of blood will contain between 6,000 and 9,000 white blood cells. The term leukopenia will indicate that there is an inadequate number of leukocytes. An account that's less than 2,500 per microliter will usually indicate that there is a serious disorder. On the other hand, leukocytosis will refer to an excessive number of leukocytes. An account of more than 30,000 white blood cells per microliter will usually also indicate that there is a serious disorder. These endings, penia and osis, they can also be used to indicate either low or high numbers, respectively, of specific types of white blood cells. So, for example, lymphopenia means too few lymphocytes. And on the other hand, lymphocytosis means an unusually high number of lymphocytes. Let's move on and talk about the specific granular leukocytes or granulocytes. The granular leukocytes or granulocytes, they will be subdivided based on the staining characteristics into neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. Neutrophils, like the name says, they're going to be these neutral staining granules, so they're not going to be either acidic nor basic. Eosinophils, they will use eosin as the stain, which is actually an acidic dye. And basophil, they will use a basic dye known as hematoxylin. So this is where those names come from. And from these images, we can see that all the three cells, they will have granules inside of them, which are those dots that we can see here on the neutrophils. We can also see on the eosinophils, and these are stained in a pinkish color. And in the basophils, these are stained in a bluish purple color. Neutrophils, they will represent about 50 to 70% of the circulating white blood cells. And like I said, they're called neutrophils because their cytoplasm is going to be packed with this pale neutral staining granules containing lysosomal enzymes and bactericidal compounds, which are mainly bacteria-killing substances. With regards to their size, they're going to be twice as big as the red blood cells. They will have this very dense, contorted nucleus that may be condensed into a series of lobes like beads on a string. As we can see from these images here, notice how this one forms 3 lobes, this other one forms 4 lobes. So that's the nucleus that looks like little beads on a string. And this attribute has given these cells another name, which are polymorphonuclear leukocytes, or PMNs. These cells, they are highly mobile, meaning that they're able to move very well, and because of this, they're going to be the first of the white blood cells to arrive at a site of injury. They are very active phagocytes. They will specialize in attacking and digesting bacteria, and they usually have a very short lifespan. They're going to survive for about only 12 hours. And after actively engulfing a debris or a pathogen, a neutrophil will die. But its breakdown releases some chemicals that will attract other neutrophils to the same site, and it will also attract other cells that have a broad antibiotic activity against the pathogens. Next, we have the eosinophils that will represent about 2 to 4% of the circulating white blood cells. They can also be called acidophils, and they are named this way because their granules, like I said earlier, they will stain with eosin, which is an acidic red dye. So we can see from this image over here that the granules do look reddish. Eosinophils are also very big because they have a similar size to neutrophils. So this also means that they will be twice as big as the red blood cells. With regards to their nucleus, they're going to have this deep red granules, which we can see on this image over here. And their nucleus will contain 2 lobes, as seen represented on both of these images. And when they contain 2 lobes, we can say that they are bilobed. So this will make it very easy to identify the eosinophils. Now these cells, they're phagocytic cells. This means that they are going to be attracted to foreign compounds that have reacted with circulating antibodies. Eosinophil numbers, they will increase dramatically during, for example, an allergic reaction or a parasitic infection. And eosinophils, they're also attracted to injury sites where they will release enzymes that will reduce the degree of inflammation and also control the spread of the adjacent tissues. So it has a very important role in controlling the spread of the inflammation process. The last granulocyte that we will cover are the basophils. These are named this way because they do have numerous granules that will stain with a basic dye. These granules, as we can see from this image, they will stain a deep purple or blue, and the stain that is used is usually hematoxylin. Basophils are going to be relatively rare. They will only account for less than 1% of the leukocyte population. With regards to their size, they're going to be just a little bit larger than the red blood cells, as we can see here from this image. Their nucleus will have this specific S-shaped structure, which will make it easy to identify these cells. And they also have a short lifespan of about 18 hours. They will migrate to the sites of injury, and they will cross the capillary endothelium to accumulate within the damaged tissues. And once they are there, they will discharge their granules into the interstitial fluids. Now, the granules will contain histamine, which is important for blood vessel dilation. It will also contain heparin, which is a compound that's important for preventing blood clot. And the release of these chemicals will increase the inflammation response at the injury site by increasing the capillary and the venule permeability. Now, basophils will also release certain chemicals that will stimulate mast cells and also attract basophils and other white blood cells to the area. So they all will work together to attract other cells to the injury site.